we rarely determine value in absolute terms. A reference point is always needed to establish it. And precisely because of this, we are icily susceptible to prefabricated comparisons. That is one of the phrases that resonated deeply with me when I read it. Because it is not only true for trivial choices, selecting a dish on the menu or a pair of shoes in a store, but also applies to seemingly the most significant decisions in a person's life. We rarely know what we truly want, only that we have more or less than others. The book I want to tell you about today is An Anatomy of the Human Mind. It does not console us with live rationale mantras, but rather directly addresses the systematic irrationality in every corner of life. The pages are filled with elaborate experiments, often bitterly funny, demonstrating that we frequently act contrary to our intentions, imagination. From the shrewdly priced newspaper to make us choose the right promotional package, to the expensive pill that suddenly cures pain faster than the cheap one. From the free chocolate that makes us overlook a more beneficial choice, to the way we are willing to help selflessly but recoil when offered a token payment. All of them portray a fragile human psyche, easily manipulated, yet repeating in a strange pattern. I remember the first time I read it, I both laughed and felt a profound sense of recognition. Because each experiment is not just a game in a research room, but a mirror reflecting my life, your life, and society itself. Who hasn't procrastinated on an important task, even though they knew that delaying it would only bring more suffering? Who hasn't clung to a meaningless item just because they already own it? Who hasn't tried to keep all options open, only to lose sight of the primary goal? These paradoxes are not someone else's business, but our own daily reality. The biggest question the book poses is also the one I want to present to you now. If humans are not truly rational, but predictably irrational, how should we live? Is it possible to build systems from the individual to society, to reduce the traps we set for ourselves, or do we have to accept drifting in the current of mistakes, consoling ourselves that at least we are not alone? Because everyone is the same. The posing of that question is not meant to be pessimistic. On the contrary, it is only when we admit irrationality that we have hope. Because if there is a rule, we can design a way to live wiser, so as not to pay a heavy price for familiar stumbles. This book is like a seasoned old friend, who smiles while pointing out to us, "Here, you fell into the trap again," neither scolds nor soothes, but offers us a new perspective, where irrationality is no longer a tragedy, but an opportunity to learn how to rearrange our lives. So, are you ready to step with me into a world where irrational things no longer hide in the shadows, but are clearly revealed, so that we can look straight at them and ask ourselves, in how many decisions are we truly in control, and how many times are we merely guided by invisible hands? Before getting into the book review, we strongly encourage you to purchase and read it to fully appreciate the content, because only when you finish this book will you understand the issues I am telling you about. Please buy the book and support the author. And now, let's start reviewing this book together. In a seemingly ordinary afternoon, I accidentally saw an advertisement selling newspapers with 3 options. At first glance, there was nothing worth pausing over for too long. The electronic version was cheap, the print version was expensive, the combined print and electronic package was priced exactly the same as the print version. Instinctively, everyone noticed the strangeness. Why would a seemingly useless option like the standalone print version exist? But its very presence changed the way we look. Instead of comparing the electronic version with the print version, the eye was immediately drawn to the combined package. We think we are clever when we choose the best option, but in fact, the presence of the decoy led the way. Humans rarely determine absolute value on their own. We don't know exactly how much a 6-cylinder car is worth. It's only that it must be more expensive than the 4-cylinder version. When buying a TV, the majority choose the one in the middle, as if it were the safe path nestled between 2 guide lights. In a restaurant, a high-priced dish is rarely ordered, but serves to push us toward the second most expensive dish, where the restaurant's profit has been cleverly hidden in the difference. Even in relationships, a less attractive option sometimes highlights the other person. We imagine ourselves to be free, but in fact, we are only flying in the orbit created by comparison. But relativity doesn't just stop at meals or cars. It permeates even where reason supposedly reigns supreme: finance. A young employee once dreamed of making $100,000 per year. 3 years later, he was earning 3 times that, but still stood before his boss and complained that his colleagues were earning slightly more. The initial ambition disappeared, replaced only by the agony of comparison. When senior managers' salaries are made public, they not only fail to lower expectations, but also create an endless ladder of upward pressure. The more they look sideways, the shorter the satisfaction becomes. This is the bitter paradox. We don't exactly crave more, but crave more than others. Money, position, even joy, all become fragile when placed next to the larger circle. A doctor once craved the Nobel Prize. However, only a few years later, when friends boasted of yachts and villas, he abandoned his research to rush to Wall Street. The dream disappeared, leaving only the urge to escape the feeling of inferiority. Happiness is not measured by what we have, but by the distance relative to the person next to us. It's not easy to break free, but sometimes it simply requires moving one's feet, stepping away from the comparison circles that make us diminish ourselves. At a class reunion, instead of standing near the person boasting an astronomical salary, we choose to chat with someone with a simpler life. When buying a house, we skip those that are beyond our means so as not to make ourselves unhappy. The essence of the problem lies not in the amount of money or the item, but in the illusion of relativity that the mind constantly constructs. From here, another door opens. The value of supply and demand, seemingly objective, but is that truly the case? A story from the distant ocean illustrates that everything is much more fragile. A man once held post-war surplus watches, trading them for worthless black pearls. At first, no one paid attention, but by placing them next to diamonds, associating them with luxury stores, hanging an absurd price tag on them, the world immediately bowed in recognition. From being discarded, black pearls ascended to the necks of urban ladies, and the entirely arbitrary initial price became firmly anchored in human perception, lasting year after year. From that moment, an implicit principle emerged. Value is not discovered, but shaped. Just as young geese see the first moving object and assume it is their mother, we are also imprinted by the initial impression, a phenomenon known as anchoring. When a number appears before our eyes, no matter how meaningless, it leaves a trace in the mind, and subsequent decisions revolve around that point like a metal needle drawn by a magnet in a class at MIT. Students were asked to write the last 2 digits of their social security number and then decide whether they were willing to pay that amount for wine, a wireless keyboard, or a box of chocolates. No one believed that these random numbers affected the choice. But when the results emerged, the group with the high numbers was willing to pay many times more than the group with the low numbers. They thought they were independent, but were actually anchored to a meaningless starting point, from the black pearl to the last digits of an identity document. All perceived values are fragile. This systematic arbitrariness forms the foundation for economic loops. People pay more not because the item is intrinsically more deserving, but because they first encountered that value at that level. Once the anchor is set, subsequent purchases revolve around that price point, lasting indefinitely. The market, seemingly objective, turns out to be driven by layers of psychological imprints. Imagine a person buys their first pair of shoes at a high price, and then any other pair that is slightly cheaper is considered a bargain. Conversely, if they first encountered it at a cheap price, every subsequent higher price is met with resistance. Value is no longer a matter of material or effort, but the first ink stain on a fresh page. Once that ink stain is set, every subsequent line is forced to revolve around it. The danger is that we often believe we are acting rationally. We believe that supply and demand are iron laws, that prices reflect scarcity and true value. But if supply and demand start from an arbitrary point, then all the subsequent curves are merely illusions maintained by habit and memory. The initial value is like the storyteller opening the play. It does not need to be real, just powerful enough to anchor in memory so that the following scenes are compelled to conform. And then, another phenomenon appears with power no less than the anchoring effect. It does not come from a number, but from one word, free. In one experiment, premium Lindt chocolate was sold for $15, while Hershey's Kisses was just 1 cent. The majority chose Lindt because the quality difference was too stark. But when the price dropped by 1 cent for each, meaning Hershey's Kisses became free, the picture reversed. The crowd rushed to take the free chocolate even though its actual price was still significantly less than the value it provided. The number 0 created a strange surge. When something is free, reason leaves the stage. The fear of loss disappears, leaving an overwhelming excitement. An inexpensive item can still be declined, but few can resist a free one. We accept long queues, put in extra effort, and even spend more on other things just to hunt for the free gift. As if 0 opens a magical gate where all calculations dissolve. The frightening realization is that in the real world, free is rarely harmless. Companies use it as bait. Social policies use it to guide behavior. We think we are gaining, but often we end up paying more. 0 turns into a double-edged sword. It makes us feel like we are winning, but at the same time, it strips away the ability to look directly at the real cost. From the newspaper packages, pearls, and chocolates, all show a common picture. We do not act as rational individuals. We are dragged by comparison, branded by the first impression, and mesmerized by the number 0. A fine line that few notice exists between two worlds. On one side are social norms, where we act out of connection, kindness, and a sense of belonging. On the other are market norms, where every behavior is converted into monetary value. These two worlds often coexist in parallel, but when they collide, the result is never simple. Try to imagine. A friend asks you to help them move house. You are willing to come, carry things all day, but do it happily because it is an act of help. But if he gives you VND 50,000 as payment, the feeling immediately changes. Suddenly, the action is no longer sharing, but becomes a cheap transaction. You might refuse. Or if you accept, the mood is completely different. The introduction of money shatters a delicate structure built on trust and kindness. Experiments have proven this. When people are asked to help with a small task without compensation, they agree. When offered a small amount of money, many refuse. But when offered a large amount, they accept because the rules of the game then shift entirely to the market. The paradox is there. Paying a small amount reduces motivation, while paying nothing sustains enthusiasm. We constantly live in the overlapping zone of these two worlds. Volunteer work, helping neighbors, family meals, all operate under social norms. They bring joy, connection, and a sense of meaning. But when money intervenes, that atmosphere is distorted. Once relationships have been dragged toward the market, it is difficult to pull them back toward the social sphere. The same applies in the work environment, when everything is just salary, bonuses, penalties, and contracts. People easily lose their sense of loyalty and sharing. Conversely, when an organization creates a culture of attachment, encouraging contributions beyond calculation, employees are ready to do more than what is formally stipulated in the contract. Money is necessary but not sufficient. It buys hours of work but not dedication. This difference is also evident in the family. Try to compare children helping parents clean the house out of duty and love versus parents paying them every time they wash dishes. The action is the same, but the meaning is completely different. One creates connection, the other turns into a transaction that easily fractures affection. The cost of mixing the two systems of norms is huge. When we socialize relationships with money, we think we are increasing efficiency. But we are actually losing the most intangible element, the human dimension of behavior. And once we step toward the market, returning to the social side is almost impossible. If an organization once paid employees with money to encourage volunteering, when that payment is cut, it is difficult to restore the original spirit of willingness. This leads to another paradox. Sometimes to encourage kindness, it is best to pay nothing at all so that feelings operate in their own space. Do not mix in money. That is not a romantic appeal, but the result of a series of psychological experiments showing that human nature is easily shaped by the context in which the action is framed. Connecting the pieces, the picture becomes clear, from endless comparison and the first imprint of anchoring. to the sweet illusion of zero and the collision between the two systems of norms, everything points in one direction. We are not rational machines. We act according to invisible rules, often contrary to our own true interests. This irrationality is not random, but repeatable enough to be named, predictably irrational. We often think we know ourselves well, that reason is powerful enough to control every situation. But when breathing quickens and emotions run high, all principles suddenly become as fragile as wet paper. In a private experiment, young men were asked to answer questions about sexuality, morality, and the level of risk they were willing to accept when in a normal state. They gave quite measured answers. But when their bodies were aroused, all those norms quickly collapsed. Things once considered repulsive became suddenly acceptable. Behaviors they swore never to do suddenly became things they might try. That transformation is no joke. It shows that we are too naive to think we can maintain reason in all circumstances. When sober, we promise to be faithful, to be safe, not to cross the line. But when the wave of emotion hits, the promise melts. The paradox lies in the fact that it is when we are calm that we underestimate the power of the hot state. As a result, we do not prepare, we do not set up safeguards. And when the storm comes, we are naked before the power of instinct. The question is true freedom not in the ability to choose while impulsive, but in the ability to restrain oneself beforehand? Condoms stored in the wallet, rigid control mechanisms, might be the saving grace. Not because we are weak, but because we clearly understand how weak we will be. Freedom sometimes takes the form of a chain, a reminder that we ourselves set the limit to save ourselves. If hot emotions break the will, procrastination erodes life slowly but surely. Everyone is promised to start tomorrow, dieting, studying, saving, quitting smoking, but tomorrow rarely comes. In one class, when students were allowed to choose their own deadlines for assignments, the majority stretched them out and then got stuck in cramming, resulting in low grades and high anxiety. Conversely, the group given fixed deadlines studied better. It turns out that being forced from the outside brought genuine freedom. Freedom from the burden of laziness and postponement. Think about how many times we gave ourselves complete freedom and the result was getting lost. The truth is not easy to swallow. Absolute freedom is sometimes a burden, while timely constraints offer redemption. People who set deadlines for themselves, even with penalties, often go further. That could be an automatic savings account deduction, a compulsory vaccination schedule to keep, or an accountability partner. A pre-commitment mechanism is like building a fence. It's preventing us from sliding down the familiar slope of procrastination, from hot emotions that derail to hesitation that traps us. The picture becomes increasingly clear. We do not lack knowledge. We do not lack reason, but we lack the mechanisms to keep ourselves on track. Humans do not fail because they do not know what to do, but because they know and fail to do it. And the solution often lies in the courage to admit one's weakness and then voluntarily erect protective walls. Possession, which seemingly offers security, often becomes the most subtle cage. Observe how people react when they have an item in hand. For the same basketball ticket, if they possess it, they will demand a price many times higher than the amount they would be willing to pay to buy it if they didn't have the ticket. No objective reason can explain this discrepancy. A simple change in the state of having or not having is enough to invert the valuation. The secret lies in the asymmetry between gain and loss. The joy of gaining a small benefit cannot compare to the pain of losing that exact benefit. Loss cuts us much deeper than the euphoria of gaining more. When we talk about expectation, we often think of it only as predictions in our head. But expectation is not just in the mind. It permeates the experience itself, transforming the perception of reality. On one occasion, participants were divided into two groups, drinking the same type of beer. The only difference, one group knew that a few drops of vinegar had been added to the beer, the other group did not. The results were paradoxical. The group that didn't know still found the beer tasty, while the group that knew found it terrible. It was the same liquid, but the sensation was completely controlled by the accompanying information. In another experiment, simply telling patients that the pill was more expensive increased its pain-relieving effect significantly. A 50-cent aspirin pill beat pain faster than a 1-cent pill, even though the ingredients were identical. The price, which seemed like only an external number, seeped into the physical experience, changing the perception of the nerves. It turns out that belief can become part of the efficacy itself. Expectation effects. Not only pain or flavor, but also touches on morality. When people are reminded of high standards like the $10 commandments, their potential for cheating decreases significantly. Conversely, when the atmosphere permits rule-bending, deceit spreads. The paradox is that we often think dishonesty only happens to greedy people. But experiments show that most people are willing to cheat a little as long as they can maintain a decent image in the mirror. We don't want to think of ourselves as bad, but we also don't want to forgo an easily attainable benefit. Cash presents a unique boundary. When the reward is given in physical currency, people are much more cautious than when the reward is in the form of physical goods or credits. It seems that direct contact with money too clearly reminds us of social norms, making us more hesitant. But when the curtain is covered by indirect forms, the boundary wavers and deception flourishes. That is why embezzlers rarely steal cash, but often maneuver through documents, invoices, or withdraw through reward point systems. The nature of the act is still appropriation. But the presence of the intermediary layer makes it look less serious, and thus more psychologically palatable. These experiments expose a reality. We are not just honest or dishonest beings, but beings that negotiate with our conscience. Honesty, which seems like an immutable quality, is surprisingly fragile and flexible. Behavioral economics and hope putting it all together. We see a journey from comparison, anchoring the free phenomenon. Social norms, two emotions, procrastination, possession, the need for open doors, expectation, the illusory value of money, and even the dark corners of honesty. Humans appear not as optimal calculating machines, but as beings that are irrational, yet predictable. And this very predictability opens up hope. If we understand how we err, we can design life, markets, and society in ways that minimize the consequences of those errors. All the final pieces are fitting together into a picture that is both familiar and strange. Human irrationality is not random, but repeats according to a predictable pattern. The question is no longer why we are irrational, but what we will do with this knowledge. If we accept the truth that we are easily led, easily tricked by our own expectations and emotions, then we can redesign rules, policies, and even daily life to be more suitable. Imagine a world where banks do not just offer interest rates but also help customers. Lock away deposits to prevent them from spending impulsively. Where the government encourages vaccination by having people sign a commitment beforehand, receiving a reward if they keep the appointment. Where schools do not just teach math and literature, but also teach how humans truly make decisions, with all their weaknesses and biases. In that picture, behavioral economics is not just theory, but a practical tool to help us make fewer mistakes. It does not turn us into angels, but helps us design the world around us to uplift us rather than drag us down. It is like putting up a fence around a steep road, not because we do not know how to walk, but because we know we will stumble. Accepting our irrationality is the most rational act. Growth lies not in denying weakness, but in knowing where we are prone to slip and actively creating footholds for stability. From the laboratory with beer mixed with vinegar to the wide world of financial bubbles, the single message that echoes remains: be alert to the illusion because we ourselves are the ones who weave it. Reflecting on every daily decision, from small purchases to major life choices, we all carry the inherent seed of irrationality. Knowing it exists, we can smile and say, I am not perfectly rational, but at least I have anticipated my irrationality. And in the gap between awareness and action, a wiser, less self-deceiving, and somewhat more human life can be kindled. Therefore, once we possess something, we cling to it, even when the cost of keeping it is irrationally high. A stock is losing heavily. Instead of selling at a loss, we hold on with the faint hope that it will recover. Our house is no longer suitable. But we keep it because we have an emotional attachment. This clinging makes us sacrifice other opportunities, even burying us financially and mentally. The more we own, the greater the burden. What we think is an asset is sometimes a chain. We are willing to pay extra to avoid being downgraded from a hotel room, even if that cost might ruin the trip. We accept sacrificing freedom to hold on to the label mine. The paradox here is that the very thing we believe protects us is often what harms us most. Yet, the attachment to objects is strong. The obsession with keeping all options open is even more intense. Humans hate the feeling of being closed off. In a computer game, players were given 3 doors to choose from in order to earn points. They should have just chosen the best door and focused on it, but instead, they wasted time clicking back. And fourth, keeping the other doors from disappearing, even though the reward was insignificant. Seeing an option locked made them so uneasy that they paid a price to hold on to it. In life, we are the same. We sign up for many courses, but complete none. We maintain many lukewarm relationships just so as not to lose the possibility of it being there if needed. We spread our energy across a range of projects, fearing that giving up an option means permanent loss. In reality, this very clinging exhausts us, and the most important thing is neglected. An ancient general once burned his ships after landing, cutting off the path of retreat and forcing his soldiers to have only one path forward. When all the doors behind are closed, humans then concentrate all their vitality on the goal ahead. In contrast, modern life fosters the habit of keeping all doors open. We constantly hover between countless paths, thinking we are free, but in reality, we are being dissipated. And so, the journey from hot emotions, persistent procrastination, the cost of possession, to the obsession with the open door, has constructed a complete mirror image. In that mirror, we see ourselves, an irrational creature, but irrational in a predictable way. Recognizing that is not to despair, but to understand clearly that to live wiser, we cannot rely solely on fragile reason. We need constraints, courageous choices, and sometimes the decisiveness to know when to let go. Thank you for your patience throughout this journey. Each story and experiment not only exposes human irrationality, but also holds up a mirror reflecting back at ourselves. If you have completed this whole journey, perhaps you are also asking yourself how many times you have been led astray by the illusion of comparison, how many times you have delayed a decision, how many times you have let free offers or an intermediate layer deceive you. I hope you will leave your comments, not seeking agreement or opposition, but enabling us to see many different perspectives on the same book. Sometimes an unexpected remark from a reader illuminates a layer of meaning I had not previously considered. If you have any other book you would like to hear recounted, please share it. This journey does not stop at one point. It is always expanding according to your suggestions and the desire for exploration of each person. The biggest takeaway is not to avoid every mistake, no one can, but to understand that our mistakes have a pattern, can be anticipated, and that we can consequently live more wisely. Through accepting our irrationality, we find an even more rational anchor. That paradox is the deepest lesson. See you in the next recount.